You know, he wants to continue threatening, and he's nothing but a bully. That's all he is. And you have to stand up to the bullies in the schoolyard, or they end up taking your lunch money. And we are going to continue. We are going to continue fighting like we've never fought before. I understand it's $28 billion across the country. Majority is going to be here in Ontario. That's why we can't roll over. We have to hit back. We have to, rather than be on our back heel, as I said, we have to go forward, take the offense. We are an energy powerhouse, and we could dismantle the U.S. if we wanted to, if we all work together. No matter if it's the electricity, and I'm not speaking for the other provinces, I'm going to be very clear. The potash, the oil, we're their #1 customer in the world. They need to feel the pain rather than us constantly feeling the pain.
Canada is preparing for a bold response that could completely change the trade battle with the United States. Instead of showing fear, Canadian leaders believe this fight could make their country stronger while exposing America's biggest mistake. If Washington refuses to back down, the outcome could be much worse for the US. The latest dispute began after the Trump administration announced plans to impose an additional 50% tariff on many Canadian imports. According to Canadian officials, the proposed measures are expected to affect about 28 billion Canadian dollars in exports. The United States said the decision was based on what it described as Canada's retaliatory trade measures and discrimination against American products, including automobiles, dairy, and alcohol. Canadian leaders rejected that explanation and argued the tariffs violate the Canada-United States-Mexico agreement. At the same time, Prime Minister Mark Carney held meetings with provincial and territorial premiers to discuss a coordinated national response while continuing negotiations with Washington. Doug Ford arrived at the premiers' meeting with a direct message. He said Ontario could not continue accepting new trade penalties without responding. Speaking to reporters, Ford described President Donald Trump as a bully and argued that backing down would only encourage additional pressure. He said, "You have to stand up to the bullies in the schoolyard or they end up taking your lunch money." Ford added that Ontario would continue fighting for Canadian workers and businesses if the tariffs move ahead. Ford also discussed the possible economic impact. When reporters asked about the effect of the proposed tariffs, he said the expected cost across Canada would be around $28 billion, with Ontario likely carrying the largest share because of its manufacturing sector. Ontario remains Canada's largest provincial economy and exports large amounts of automobiles, machinery, steel, aluminum, and industrial products to the United States. Many of those industries depend on cross-border supply chains that move products between both countries before final assembly. Ford argued that Canada should move from defense to offense. He said, "We can't roll over, we have to hit back." He explained that Canada has economic leverage because the United States depends on Canadian exports in several important sectors. His comments focused on energy, electricity, potash, and oil. He said Canada should be prepared to use those strengths if negotiations fail before the proposed tariffs take effect. The strongest moment came when Ford described Canada's position in North American trade. He stated, "We are an energy powerhouse, and we could dismantle the US if we wanted to, if we all work together." He immediately added that he was not speaking for the other provinces. He then listed electricity, potash, and oil as examples of products the United States depends on. Ford said, "Canada should make the United States feel the pain, rather than us constantly feeling the pain." Those comments quickly became the main headline from the Premier's meeting because they reflected a more aggressive position than previous public statements. Ford's comments were based on Canada's role as a major supplier of several key resources. Canada exports electricity to several US states through interconnected power grids. Provinces including Ontario, Quebec, Manitoba, and British Columbia regularly sell electricity across the border. Canada is also one of the world's largest producers of potash, a fertilizer ingredient used by American farmers. In addition, Canada remains the largest foreign supplier of crude oil to the United States. These exports support industries, transportation, electricity generation, and agriculture throughout the American economy. Although Ford highlighted those sectors, he did not announce any immediate restrictions on exports. Instead, he argued Canada should be prepared to use every available economic option if trade negotiations fail. His comments came while provincial leaders continued discussions about possible responses to Washington's latest tariff announcement. Several premiers supported maintaining pressure during negotiations while also protecting Canadian workers and businesses from additional economic damage. The tariff dispute also expanded beyond industrial products. Earlier in the trade conflict, several provinces restricted the sale of American alcohol through government-controlled liquor stores. Ontario's Liquor Control Board removed many U.S. alcoholic products from store shelves after earlier tariff actions. Following the latest U.S. announcement, Ford confirmed Ontario would not reverse that policy simply because Washington demanded it. He argued that removing provincial measures without a broader agreement would weaken Canada's negotiating position. Other provinces have taken different approaches, but the issue has become another important part of the wider trade dispute between both countries. While Ford delivered the strongest public comments, Prime Minister Mark Carney continued pursuing negotiations. After speaking with President Trump, Carney announced that both governments had agreed to intensify trade talks before the proposed tariffs are scheduled to take effect. He repeated that Canada remains ready to negotiate, but also stated that all options remain available if no agreement is reached. Federal officials also said provincial actions, including restrictions on U.S. alcohol, would only be reviewed as part of a broader settlement rather than through separate concessions. Ford argued that Canada should not negotiate from a weak position. During his remarks, he repeated that Ontario would continue defending Canadian industries. He also said the country has resources that the United States cannot easily replace in the short term. His comments referred to electricity exports, crude oil, and potash production. Canada supplies electricity to several American states through long-established transmission networks. Canada is also the largest foreign supplier of crude oil to the United States, while Saskatchewan produces a large share of the world's potash used in fertilizer production. Ford made it clear that decisions involving energy exports would require cooperation across Canada. After saying, "We could dismantle the US if we wanted to, if we all work together," he immediately added, "I'm not speaking for the other provinces." That clarification showed he was describing Canada's combined economic position rather than announcing a national policy. No provincial or federal government announced plans to stop electricity, oil, or potash exports during the meeting. Another issue discussed during the trade dispute involves American alcohol products. Earlier in the conflict, Ontario directed the Liquor Control Board of Ontario to remove U.S. beer, wine, and spirits from store shelves as part of Canada's response to earlier American tariffs. Other provinces introduced similar restrictions through their own liquor distribution systems. During the Premier's meeting, Ford said Ontario would not remove those restrictions simply because of new pressure from Washington. He said, "We can't keep rolling over," explaining that Canada should maintain its existing measures while negotiations continue. The alcohol restrictions have become one part of a much larger trade disagreement. Industry experts told Global News that alcohol sales represent only a small share of overall Canada-US trade, but they have become a visible symbol of the dispute because provincial liquor boards control alcohol distribution in much of Canada. The measures also demonstrated that provinces can participate in Canada's response alongside the federal government when trade disagreements expand beyond traditional tariffs.